Hey folks, this is Kalani. Going to talk about the Crusader changes in 2.0.5. Now, very quickly, the most important changes, arguably for the Crusader, are that our passive mitigation went from 15% to 30%. So now we're on total equal footing with barbarians and monks. We've got that full damage reduction for being a melee, which is interesting because half the builds for Crusader aren't melee, but details. So the second biggest thing is that Heavenly Strength had the movement penalty removed, so there is no penalty for running a two-handed weapon now, which is really cool. In line with this, pretty much half of our passives got changed. The other big one being Fervor. When wielding a one-handed weapon, you gain 15% increased attack speed and cooldown reduction, which is really cool. Basically, you don't have a penalty for using a two-handed weapon, but you get a nice boon for having a one-handed weapon, which arguably is the way it should have been anyway, either or. So going from there, Vigilant got a buff to its non-physical damage reduction to 20%, Righteousness stayed the same, Fanatism, can't say that word, is different, completely changed to an attack speed increase on all of the primary abilities by 15%. Insurmountable is Wrath on block. Indestructible is probably one of the favourites for hardcore Crusaders. When you receive fatal damage, you become immune to damage, gain 35% increased damage and 82,000 life per kill for 5 seconds, with a minute internal cooldown. That's pretty absurd. That's pretty ridiculous for hardcore. Holy Cause had its damage increase just baselined, so it's no longer just for holy damage. Very nice. Divine Fortress, still the same. Wrathful, still the same. Lord Commander remains the same. Hold Your Ground, still the same. Long Arm of the Law, still the same. Iron Maiden had a ridiculous nerf. This is quite appalling, actually. Thorns increased by 50% instead of a flat 50,000. I believe it was, before all the scaling hoo-ha, which was hotfixed. So Thorns kind of took a really painful kick in the crotch in this patch, by the looks of things. I don't know, let me know, if you're a Thorns Crusader, what exactly do you think of this change, and has it pushed you out of Thorns? I don't see Thorns ever catching up to any other build with that reduction on Iron Maiden. That seems really crazy. Renewal stayed the same. Finery changed to a 1.5% strength bonus for every gem socketed into your gear. Essentially, this becomes worth a lot more than it used to if you have the gear. So 1.5% strength, give or take, you'll need to have, 6,500 strength. After that, it's actually better than the old Finery, which is really cool. Blunt stayed the same. Towering Shield is now a damage increase for Punish, Shield Bash and Blessed Shield by 20%, and reduces the cooldown of Shield Glare by 30%, which is really cool. So, if you want to permanently blind people, Shield Glare by 30%, hell yeah, cooldown reduction, high five. That seems kind of crazy. Really nice for Blessed Shield builds and, I guess, block builds overall, which is really cool. Now, that's the passives. Quite a lot of skills were changed as well, so hopefully I won't glance over everything. A lot of things got quite a ridiculous buff, and I don't think a great deal of changes were had to primaries, except have a little look at your runes. If you were using something which was a specific element, things might have changed. So the one that annoyed me the most was Justice and Hammer of Pursuit is now physical, Sword of Justice physical. You've got, I don't believe there were a great deal of changes to many of them, but I believe Retaliate Punish used to be physical, and physical there as well. So there have been rune changes. What this means is that if you're using something in a holy build that is no longer holy, obviously that's going to be a bit of a pain in the butt, but what this does do is open up other build options, because, for example, you have Sweep Attack, which now has Holy. Yeah, Holy and Sweep Attack. You've got not Blessed Hammer, you've got Divine Aegis, Physical Blessed Shield. Coolio. Fist of the Heavens, you've got a Fire Fist of the Heavens, which is pretty cool. If we go forward from there, we'll talk about those later, and those, and those. Should have gone the other way. Falling Sword got a huge damage increase, which is really cool. Pretty much on everything, which is really, really nice, but it's up to 1700. Still probably not worth using due to the 30-second cooldown and the wrath cost, but you know, maybe. We'll swap out to this slot because Akarat's Champion got quite a strange change, and you'd call it a buff, but you'd also call it a nerf in some aspects. So Akarat's Champion now increases your damage instead of your attack speed. It increases your damage by 35% and your wrath regeneration by 5. Okay? Now, the things that changed kind of greatly and would be considered the nerf, inverted commas, were the runes. So note that it no longer gives you a second life as baseline. You've got different runes, so make sure you go through all of them. Akarat's Champion with Firestarter, dealing damage burns enemies, dealing 460 weapon damage as fire over 3 seconds. Embodiment of Power ups that wrath regeneration to 10. Rally had kind of been... I don't even know what to make of this. It might still be worth it in some builds, and I'm kind of playing around with it in a Condemn cooldown reduction build, but you'll notice that it's nowhere near as strong as it used to be. It doesn't have that constant tick over, it doesn't have the ability to basically make itself come off cooldown really quickly due to the 1 second 50% chance on damage to take off a cooldown, you know, that kind of deal. Instead, it's a flat 12 seconds. So that does allow you to, for example, Condemn, Akarat's Champion, Condemn, which is kind of cool, but it's nowhere near what it used to be. Prophet will be your go-to defensive rune, giving you the armor that was there before, but this is where your second life is on Akarat's Champion. So it's kind of a buff and a nerf, as I say. And then you can get some of the attack speed back with the Hasteful rune. It's interesting. I want to see how many people with the 6 set keep running Akarat's Champion. Oh, as an undocumented change, or keeping the same, you're still immune to CC in Akarat's Champion, and it now prevents Town Portal interruption. Oh yeah. Heaven's Fury had a nice buff to its damage, pretty much overall. For example, Ascendancy now goes up to 2700, which is fairly ridiculous, but nice damage increase overall. Thou Shall Not Pass has been changed to lightning damage. I don't really think that's entirely worth it at all, although it could be fun to use, who knows. Bombardment, not a great deal was changed here, except you've got a few variances in the types of damage, so you've actually got a holy one in there, as well as some additional fire. And that's all of those. So the other things that I wanted to talk about were specifically Judgment and Resolved. That's down to 20% increased chance to be critically hit, making that practically worthless. Not entirely, but if you look at Shield Glare, you have a higher uptime on Shield Glare. It's a hard CC, meaning that they're not going to move or cast or do any damage at all, and you can rune it for 20% more damage, which is arguably quite a bit better than 20% increased chance to crit. So, as a very quick note, some abilities had coefficients that weren't working properly. Now, this is the rate at which they proc other abilities, so on-hit abilities and that kind of thing. The best example is Provoke. Now, when you use Provoke, any damage you deal will also deal 50% weapon damage as lightning. That's not actually true. There's a chance for each section of damage to deal that damage dependent on its coefficient. Now, abilities such as Heaven's Fury had coefficients which were lower than intended, so they've been brought up, meaning that if Provoke hadn't changed, you would see a large increase of damage because you'd be getting Provoke more often due to Heaven's Fury's coefficient being increased. what we know about provoke is that the charged up coefficient wasn't working as intended and it has been corrected. That's what we know, which means that we don't know whether it was lower or higher, but from how charged up performed we can kind of assume it was higher and it's been brought down, but that'll need a lot more testing. Basically, provoke charged up may not be the monstrous cooldown that it used to be, but it should still be fairly strong. I don't see them changing it that greatly without giving us specific numbers. So that's just a very quick note on that front. Now, all of these changes added together mean that a few builds took quite a bad hit. Condemn, the build that I'm running right here, took quite a bad hit from Akarat's Champion and Rally. We can't get Condemn spammable anymore, especially, I mean, even when you get 6 set Akans, you just can't do it, which is a little disappointing, to say the least, but I'm fairly sure we can make it work. Other builds, such as Blessed Shield, I should probably note that Blessed Shield had a decrease on its shattering throw. It's now down to 170 from 333 on the splits, but the single target damage, the initial impact, is up to 430. So that's a weapon, that's a damage increase, which is pretty cool. I mean, that's what Blessed Shield Crusaders were suffering from the most, was the single target. So that helps a little bit with that. Fist of the Heavens had its AoE potential kind of cut a little bit, but its single target went up. So its initial damage went up to 545. The charge bolts went down to 255, and pretty much every rune got a hit. So fissure didn't actually go down on the fissure itself, but the arcs between different fissures, that got a hit. Divine Well's little lightning zaps got a hit. So make sure you read through things carefully and see what's changed before you go ahead and use something for your build. Interestingly, Blessed Hammers got quite a nice buff. It might make hammers worthwhile, especially at lower gear levels, which could be really fun for starting Crusaders, but as I say, pretty much everything got a damage increase, but just those two to note. Blessed Shield did get a decrease on Shattering Throw, and Fist of the Heavens got a decrease on its overall AoE capabilities. So that kind of hurts AoE a little bit in these builds. But as I was saying, the nice thing about this is it brings out new build varieties. With the rune changes, you can run a Fire Blessed Shield build a lot easier, which is really nice. You can throw about cold damage if you really want to. It's just nice to have a little bit of variety, but that's pretty much all of the changes to Crusader. If you have any questions or queries, please leave them in the comment section below. I'll try to get back to you. Apart from that, if you liked the video, remember to hit that like button just below, and if you want to see more, feel free to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always, I will see you next time.